Hey, this is Glenn. Welcome to another episode of Difficult Questions. This one is on what do we teach the kids? This is on the back of the big row about critical race theory in the schools and gender studies and boys versus girls and teaching sexuality. And first off, I think that the reason we are at all talking about this stuff is society's falling apart because the people that know how to succeed do and just keep succeeding, and the people that don't keep failing, and it just keeps getting worse and worse for the people who don't know how to succeed. And we're not teaching people how to succeed. So they're falling by the wayside. They're getting angry. We've seen a lot of homeless on the streets. We've seen a lot of problems. We're not taking care of ourselves. School shootings all over the place. So I feel that the people in power have to have something to blame. And so we're going to blame our teachers. It must be, or we're going to blame our education system. It must be the children. We're teaching people critical race theory, and that's the problem. Or we're teaching people about gender studies, and that's the problem because these kids aren't prepared and we're distracting them or whatever it is. I think that they're trying to find a scapegoat. The reason I think this is I came from teachers. My dad was a elementary school, a music teacher, but mainly for he did elementary school, and then he did middle school and then high school. My mom was an elementary school teacher, specifically a kindergarten teacher. And then I was with someone who was an elementary school teacher as well. And I was with her for 10 years. So I kind of know what's going on. I also taught at universities. So I saw, even though there were older kids, I saw what we were teaching, what we weren't. And I got to see a lot of that. So I wanted to just kind of go over what I think is happening. And the first thing is who teaches who teaches what. And you have stuff in the schools, and we're supposed to teach people something, kids something, but a lot of stuff they learn from home. And I think about my upbringing, and I think about all the stuff I learned about sex or race or any of that stuff. I mean, that was all from my friends and from my neighborhood and from my parents. And it wasn't necessarily from schools, even though we talked about sex and sex ed in schools. And I learned about some stuff academically. I call myself part of the sex ed generation, where they started putting sex ed into schools in the 80s. So I know that we teach kids and kids learn at school, but I don't know that they're learning how to be bad people at school. Kids are bad people. I mean, you think about bullying. Bullying doesn't go away. Bullying is innate in people. You think about the questions like, do you have a penis or a vagina? All these exploratory questions that kids come up with and are trying to figure their world out, because their world is all exploratory. They don't know how anything works as they're coming up. And so their formalized school education is just one part of their learning. Then they go home and they learn from their friends, and they learn from their family, and they learn from their community. And they're just soaking everything up. So I don't know that to focus on formalized education is the answer. And I know people in formalized education. My mom really focused on early childhood education, what kids need early on. I know teachers, they're professionals, and they know they're really trying their best to get the information to children that they think they need. And they're competent people. I mean, teachers are professionals. One of the things that my dad always said is the mistake that teachers made is they They went for the blue-collar business model of a union for teachers. If you think about other professional degrees where you have a degree and then you need a certification beyond that, or you need a credential beyond your undergrad or your graduate degree, teachers are one of those, but they're represented in this kind of very blue-collar union, teacher versus the administration kind of way. And psychologists aren't necessarily like that. Lawyers aren't necessarily like that. Physicians aren't necessarily like that. They're into guilds and they kind of represent themselves and they negotiate independently. But we've decided in school, we're going to be unionized and we're going to not have agency over our own profession as teachers. And I think that's really hurting us because there's this expectation that you have to have all this knowledge and be this amazing person as a teacher. And you do, but then you don't get compensated for that. And you also get treated like the punching bag from both administration and the parents. Because politically, administration just wants people to be happy. They want the parents to be happy. And the parents just want their kids out of their hair and someone to do something better with their kids than they can do better with their kids. And at the same time, they're really protective of their children. To put professionals in the middle of that, they've got a lot to do. And they know best. Believe me, they're trying and they know best. We've been teaching kids a long time. They know what they're doing, but administration needs to come out with a newfangled thing. And so publishers come out with curriculum and then teachers all of a sudden have to teach for this. I know because the person I was with, she was dealing with this. She knew how to teach, but then all of a sudden every 5-6 years, there was a new curriculum and there's something new in a new way. I was teaching universities. By the time the Bush Jr. administration and their No Child Left Behind BS came through where it was teach for the test. So by the time I got students into college, they had no idea how to critically think. They knew how to take and pass a test, prepare and take and pass a test. And so it was just to have them think for themselves was not possible. And that is administration. We're going to get our test scores up. We're going to do the best. It's the teachers having to follow politicians and their whims because they're blaming other people for the failings of the society at whole. And it's not the teacher's fault. I'm seeing that. But so, okay, if it's not the teacher's fault, and I'm telling you that, and you can believe me or you can not believe me, well, what do we teach our children in schools? Do we teach them to be socialized? Do we teach them about gender studies, or do we teach them critical race theory? People don't like it. And I was trying to research what a critical race theory was and what people perceive it as. And it's an acknowledgement that our ancestors were jerks. that Black people have not had a good time in this nation. And despite what policies we put in place socially, they still don't have a good time. And other minorities don't have a good time. And other minorities of gender don't have a good time because we are jerks. Historically, we segregate people. If you're not in the in crowd, if you're not a normal person, then we don't like you and we relegate you to the corners of society and we make sure that you don't succeed because you make us feel uncomfortable. And that's a criticism, critical race theory. And no one wants their children taught criticisms because no parent wants their child to learn that their ancestors were not nice people. We have this idea of country pride, right? We're going to stand and we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance to this country that we were born into. We're going to be thankful for the country that we have. Why? Why? Well, it's part of this indoctrination. And kids, they need excitement, but they also need to feel safe and secure. So I think part of this indoctrination, this country indoctrination, this standardization, is to make kids know what they're going to get into and follow that. You know what you're going to get in education when you go to school. And in that way, in some way, that makes kids feel secure, safe and secure, because you start messing with them. Again, I work a lot with homeless issues. And if you start not being stable with a child, they get a lot of other sociological problems. So we're pushing for stability, but at the same time, what stability? Do we want to raise an Aryan race, a la World War II Germany? But do we want to use that identity of a strong nation? I mean, at some point, it makes you confident, but then it also makes you a bully. So are we teaching that? And we do indoctrinate. I was listening to a podcast, and they were saying that the reason we started physical education was because we needed better military trainees. We needed better people to join the military, more fit people to join the military. Again, the military has a function. We don't have a national draft. We don't have social service that you have to join, mandatory social service. So we've always stepped back and said, well, we don't mandate military, but we do mandate military. And in regards to bringing poverty up, one of the people in the military said, if you bring poverty up, you take away incentive to join the military. Because one of the things that the military has is it can offer poor people in messed up situations stability. It can offer them a way out. And I've met people that have joined the military to get out of their crappy situation. So even though we don't mandate that you join the military, we keep our society living on the edge and keep them ignorant and keep them where a portion is unable to sustain themselves in order to incentivize them to join the military. So what are we teaching? When I was doing research for my documentary, Why Homeless, I was in Memphis, and I was talking to a guy that ran an academy for underprivileged Black kids. And he said, the problem was, I wish I could just take them away and never give them back to their parents, because I can teach them how to be successful, but then they go home and all of that is unlearned. He said he was teaching them about investing, and he was teaching them about health insurance. And one of the kids raised their hand and he said, why you want me to live like a white person? So that's not formal education that's teaching him that white people live this way and Black people live this way and poor people live this way and rich people live this way. It's society. It's our expectations. It's everything rolled into one. The one thing that I'm trying to do education-wise is give entrepreneurial skills to students, because what I found is people were telling me that education was the golden ticket to success. Well, what that turned into is people selling me education that I could not and did not know how to utilize in order to be successful outside of formal education. So it was a trap. People were selling me a degree, which was a trap. And I'm trying to stop the trap from happening, which the people that are setting the trap, that are making money off that trap, they don't like that. At the same time, people want to hear that their society, their government is there to protect them. So they don't want to hear that message either. So it's easy to blame the teachers. You don't want to blame your family. You don't want to blame yourself. You don't want to blame the people in power. You don't want to take matters into your own hands and fix your community. You want to point fingers at teachers, at education. Education is the problem. Education is the problem for everything. I think that's what's going on. What do you think? What do we teach our children? What is wrong with teaching our children about our ancestors not being nice people and people still getting the shaft in this society? What is wrong with teaching people about different genders? And how do we teach gender and the differences in people? Do we need to worry about that? Is society going to take care of that no matter what we teach in schools? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Thanks.